Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of Movies That Move We. So for those of you who are new here, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. For a little over 2 years, we've been reviewing Black films. That's what we do, Black films. And by Black films, I mean things that have Black people in leading roles, written, directed, produced by Black people and their film companies, anything that falls within those parameters. Excuse me. So thank you for joining us. Stay a while, check out some previous posts, make yourself comfortable, get a drink, get some popcorn, and let's talk about today's movie. Today's movie is The Preacher's Wife, which was done in 1996. It stars Whitney Houston, Courtney Vance, Justin Pierre Edmond, Gregory Hines, and Denzel Washington. This film is based on a 1947 film. It's a remake, really, of the 1947 film, The Bishop's Wife. Excuse me. The film itself is based on a book. The book is called The Bishop's Wife. It was written by Robert Nathan in 1928. So what's this overall story about? So, as the title implies, it's about the pastor's wife. And basically, what's happening in the original and the remake, the church is in trouble. They're doing fundraising. The church needs a lot of repairs. And they're trying to hold on to it. You know, the congregation, they're in a rough neighborhood. And people aren't wealthy. They're given what they have. It may be $5, maybe $10, but it's not enough to take care of all the things that need to be taken care of in the church. And the pastor, played by Courtney Vance, is very involved, not just in the running of the church, but he's doing a lot of the community work also. The big difference between this and the original, The Bishop's Wife, is Courtney Vance plays this, my language, he plays it normal. He's a normal husband. He's got a million irons in the fire. His wife, played by Whitney Houston, is trying to be the supportive wife, take care of home. She's also the choir director at the church, so she's just as involved and aware of what's going on in the church. The church used to be her dad's church. She grew up in this church. And so she has an invested interest in seeing it do well also. In The Bishop's Wife, the husband and wife played a little bit differently. Loretta Young played Julia, who is the wife. That's the same name in the pastor's wife. And David Niven was the Reverend. And she was home taking care of the child, which this is really a more 1940s, 50s kind of mentality where the woman is home taking care of the child and the husband is out there doing the work and being the breadwinner for the family. Where these two stories kind of finally fall into the same path, they're in danger of losing the church. And there's someone who has a lot of money who is willing to invest in making the church better, but not by fixing what already exists. They want to build a brand new church, and it's going to be a monument to one person, pretty much, the person who has the money. So in The Preacher's Wife, they're trying to hold on to the church. Scenes in the church, you see the paint is all chipped, and they're trying to patch things up, and, you know, a lot going on during choir rehearsal. And there is a former church member played by Gregory Hines, Joe Hamilton, who's a real estate developer. And this is where they start bringing in modern day themes and conversations, especially as it pertains to the Black community. Again, this is a neighborhood that's run down. There's not a lot of resources. And he's decided to make the community that he grew up in better. So he's buying up all the real estate. He has ads. He's telling people, you know, if you want better, come to me. I'm Hamilton, and I'm going to make this town better. I have everything that you need. And he's talking about putting up high rises, tennis courts, and clubs, things that the people in the neighborhood can't afford and ain't asking for. Okay? And so you're talking about a Black character involved in the gentrification of his own community, including the church. He wants to tear it down, use that to build some new homes, and then put the church in a new location of his choosing. And so Whitney is telling her husband in the movie, Julia, she's like, no, this is my daddy's church, and you better do everything in your power to protect it. Again, the difference in the Julia from the original film and the Julia in this film is she's more engaged with her husband. The tension that exists isn't because he's not present. He's present. They're both engaged in working for the church. So they see each other, but they don't get to spend the time that they used to spend. In The Bishop's Wife, it's like they're living two completely different lives. In The Preacher's Wife, Courtney Vance comes to a point where he's like, God, I need help. I don't know how to handle all of this. And God sends an answer in the form of an angel named Dudley. Dudley appears while the Biggs' son, played by Justin Pierre Edmond, his name is Jeremiah in the film, he comes in kind of in a poop. It's like flung down to earth, and he lands between Jeremiah and his best friend while they're making snow angels. Of course, it freaks the kids out. Denzel Washington plays the angel Dudley. And the way this film interprets what an angel is a soul that formerly occupied a body. In other words, he was on earth, living, breathing, doing all the things, died, went to heaven, and waited for an assignment to come back to earth and help somebody out. In the original, Dudley was a little more all-knowing. You know, he kind of showed up discreetly on the scene, and he knew things about the people he was helping and their circle of friends. And people were like, wait a minute, who is this guy? Where'd he come from? Do we know him? I think we know him. And he just played it casually. And he already had his plan worked out on how he was going to get husband and wife back together and save the church at the same time. In The Preacher's Wife, Dudley didn't know much more than names. It seemed like he knew who he was there to help. He knew what kind of help they needed. But there were little things that he just didn't seem to know, like how the world worked around them. One of the first goofs that he made was when Jeremiah said, hey, my little ambulance truck, it doesn't work properly. He goes, oh, let me see if I can fix that. And he tweaks a couple of things, and the sirens come on, and it starts making the noise. The lights are going. And Jeremiah said it didn't have lights before. So Jeremiah caught on quick that Dudley was not of this world. He figured out very quickly this was an angel. Moving things along, basically, there came a point where Courtney had to confront Hamilton. He's like, look, you know, how can you help me? He found out that his board went to Hamilton and basically sold the church to him. And Hamilton was like, look, I'll fix your boiler while we're getting the other church built. You know, you'll at least have heat for the church, for the choir, and what have you. And so he accepted at first, but then he had to go back and was like, no, this is not what I want to do. I'm keeping the church. And Hamilton was like, no, you're not. I'm tearing it down. And you're going to get this church over here on the other side of town that I'm building. And that's all there is to it. And he tried to appeal to him. He was like, this is a church you grew up in. You don't even come to church anymore, but you're acting like what we do isn't necessary in this community. And you're wrong. Hamilton dug down, doubled down, and was like, I don't care what you say. I don't need to come to church to know what the church needs. Get out of my office. And so it goes on. In the meantime, while Henry is not available because, you know, he's out there doing the community work, he's in this meeting trying to figure out how to save the church, how to pay for a new boiler, and everything else, Dudley and Julia are hanging out. Dudley, Julia, and Jeremiah are hanging out. And so they're around town. They're going out to lunch, which people kind of turn around and look and go, who is this that Julia's with? And that's not the good Reverend she's with. And Julia's mother notices and is like, a woman don't look at a man like that. A man don't look at a woman like that unless folks are catching feelings. And Julia's mother pulled him aside, and Julia's mother is played by Jennifer Lewis. She pulls him aside and says, listen, leave my daughter alone, okay? Happy home, happy marriage, leave it alone. And they both say, okay, nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. And what ends up happening is when Dudley realizes, oh, old dude over there is trying to steal the church, he goes and he meets with him and he says, listen, why don't you come to church? Christmas Eve, come to church, get reacquainted with the people. And Dudley had this thing where if he would shake somebody's hand or take someone's hand, they would feel the spark and go, oh, he might be something more than human. And something would change in them. With Julia's mom, she immediately stopped smoking because she was smoking in the house, outside the house, anywhere she could catch a cigarette, she was smoking. When he shook Hamilton's hand, all of a sudden Hamilton was like, you know, maybe I will visit the church. And so Dudley explained at a certain point, hey, once my work here is done, he was explaining this to Reverend Biggs. Once my work here is done, you won't remember me. Julia won't remember me. None of your congregation members are going to remember the events that took place to get us here. It's just going to be this thing that you ended up in the place that you asked for help in. And so by the end, he's saying his goodbyes. He's telling them, go out there, do your thing. Hamilton came around. He didn't tear down the church. The church got the money that they needed to make the repairs. And Julia and Henry were back in sync because now some of their burden had been lifted because things had been realigned, not magically, but influentially. The only person who remembered who Dudley was Jeremiah. So it kicks into, okay, what is this film really about? Yeah, it's a feel-good holiday story, great Christmas movie. But okay, everybody has the peace, hope, and love thing as a part of the Christmas theme. But this takes it a little further. It goes into the importance of having faith, because any of these folks could have been like, Dudley, you're a scam artist, get out of here. Didn't lean into that. It was, listen, just trust me a little bit, and I promise you this thing can work out. And it was more about the actions they took along the way with his influence that kind of got things clicking and moving in the right direction. So it wasn't Dudley going, poof, there you go. Church is fixed. No one's trying to steal your property from you. It's great. Life is good. No, he had to encourage them to do the work because, hey, remember, faith without works. They did the work. And in this version, it focused a little more on community and things that were issues of that time and still issues now. You know, you had shootings. You're trying to keep the kids from getting in trouble in the community. You had an incident where a kid was accused of doing something and ended up in jail. And the Reverend had to go in there and speak on his behalf and get him out and back home for the holidays. All of those things kind of worked out, but it talked about the sense of community. Everybody was on the same page as far as this is what we need to do to make our community better. It's not as simple as money. It's us coming together. And again, you know, what is an angel? Okay, you had this more human, that's the phrase I'm using. You had this more human angel come in instead of this more godlike angel that you saw in The Bishop's Wife. So overall, what I'll say is great movie. Both of them great movies. Check them both out. Do your own compare and contrast. But definitely this holiday, check out The Preacher's Wife if you haven't seen it already. And just a tidbit, check out the soundtrack because, of course, Whitney Houston did a bulk of this soundtrack. Georgia Mass Choir was the choir in the film, and again, also on the soundtrack with Whitney Houston. So that's what I have for today. I'm not sure if we're going to have a show next weekend because, again, Thanksgiving week, and there's going to be a lot of eating and recovery from eating. Yeah, but keep an eye on the banner. Follow and like our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page so you never miss what's going on. Tell a friend. Tell a relative. Come on, join us for a discussion on Black films. And, you know, if you like it, come again. And we'll see you next week, okay? All right. Bye.